like the logic puzzles that were part of it. And then during that time, I still like tinkering with computers and fixing other computers and still
Mhm.
played with it. And then had a conversation with my older brother, and he said, like, you should probably just pursue computers.
In this episode of the Keyboard Internet podcast, I sit down with software engineer Ikani Samani. Ikani provides us insight into how he got started in tech, how he became a software engineer, and his advice to those who are pursuing a career within the software engineering industry. Ikani's a early mentor of mine when I was first getting started in tech, and I believe he has great insight for those who are pursuing a career in tech or trying to make a switch into the tech industry. With that being said, stop scrolling, stop typing on your keyboard, stop texting, and tune into this episode of the Keyboard Inner podcast. Malo apito and to alfat. Welcome everybody to another episode on the Keyboard Inner podcast. Today, I've got a special guest, Ikani Samani. Ikani, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks.
Glad to have Ikani. Ikani's been a mentor of mine from when I first got into tech, so glad to have him on the podcast today. But for those of you who don't know Ikani, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit, give folks a little bit of who you are.
Yeah, I'm Tongan. My last name is Samani. My parents are Talita and Tawala. My dad's side, they're Samanis and Lave Mais. And then my mom's side, they're Lavo Lavos and Veikosos. So that's from Vava'u. Moved here when I was a toddler, 2 years old, and then been in the States most of my life. Lived in Hawaii a little bit, played football out there in high school, and then came back. But spent most of my life in Utah.
Nice, nice, man. So I think I know my wife's related to because on the love in my side.
Yeah.
But then I was talking to my grandpa and he said we're also closely related too. And now that you mentioned that your last name is Lavo, that makes sense because my Tuwafu family is related closely
Oh yes.
with
Yeah. Yeah.
the Lavus. So
Yeah.
man, that's cool, man. I guess so. You migrated over. Were you born in Tonga? You said.
Yeah. I was born in Tonga, so I had green card, and I had to get my citizenship after I got married, or my wife would have left me. No, but yeah,
Yeah.
I had to get
Man,
the U.S. citizenship.
yeah, yeah. My wife went through the same process. She was born in Tonga at a young age, and then they migrated over here. So well, nice, man. And then when you went to school, you said you went to school in Hawaii for a little bit, or was that did you do all your schooling in Hawaii then move to America or to the
So
mainland?
yeah, so most of it I grew up in Provo, and then I went to a football camp in my like sophomore junior year, and then I played on the Kahuku team,
Hmm.
and the coach Siwaki Levi, said that he had this impression that I should come down and play with him, and I was like, sweet, cool. And I was a bad kid in high school, got in trouble all the time, and so my auntie and uncle that I went to stay with, my auntie was a school teacher, and so my parents saw it as a good opportunity for me to be able to get more discipline on academics. And so yeah, I went to Hawaii, played football, and then ended up coming back my senior year and graduating from Provo High though.
Okay, nice, nice. It's funny you mentioned Shiaki Levi's name because in high school, they had this thing called the Kingdom Bowl,
Yeah.
and I played in it. But I just remember he had a lot of workshops. But man, that guy's he's pretty strict when it comes to like making sure you pay attention to school. You know, at a young age, I think it's good to have kind of that strict coach or that one person that's kind of on you,
Yeah.
making sure you're on top of stuff. So, how was your experience with him being coached under him?
Yeah, I think he came with a lot of discipline, and
Yep.
he had a standard of excellence he wants to follow. And I think that falls back on his, like, he was a math teacher at Kahuku.
Oh, okay.
Most coaches I knew like taught PE, so
Yeah,
he came from
exactly.
a different mindset and understood the discipline that needed. With, I think, brought from mathematics, he brought it over into his daily coaching and held that standard against everyone. So yeah, it was a great experience for me to see what winning and tradition and culture, and a system you can put in place to win look like, coming from a losing school. Not
Yep.
anybody in Provo High is listening, but, coming from a school that didn't win as much to going to a school that won a lot of football games and state championships, it, changed my perspective on discipline later in my life.
Nice, nice. And that's interesting you bring that up because that school in of itself, Kuku is like big on tradition. Do you still claim Red Raiders or are you
Oh
more of a Provo
yeah.
High?
Oh, I mean, I still support Provo High, but it's a different world in Koku, right? So,
Yeah.
like the whole North Shore comes out to watch the football games, and so I've only
Mhm.
seen stuff like that in like movies and TV shows, and then you would go out there and you live it, and the whole community supporting a football team, it was just different for me. And so, yeah, having that type of experience and feeling that sense of community definitely impacted me. And I still feel part of the community. My wife and I just came back from Hawaii about a week or two ago. And so
Nice.
she definitely wants to move there. And my kids are exploring the thought of maybe going to high school out there.
Nice, nice. What changes have you seen in the area that you grew up in, or when you went to high school, compared to when you guys went on vacation there? What are some of the
Yeah.
changes?
I think it's just harder for people to stay there. So a lot of families move to Utah from there just because it's expensive to stay in Hawaii. And then most part, there's some a little bit more commercialization in that area. They took out some of the smaller stores, and there's now a little bit bigger Marriott there, and also there's some impacts to the environment with windmills and stuff. So it's a little bit weird, but still, I think the people is kind of what makes a place, and they still have a lot of great people there.
And then a point that I wanted to go back to. So you said Shiwaki Levi, he was a mathematician or a math teacher at
Yeah,
Koku. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I guess to that point too, was there any tech classes that you took while you were in elementary or high school at Kahuku or
yeah,
in Provo?
yeah. So um, back when I was in school, I think around second or third grade here in Provo, they introduced like Apple had landed a contract, and Apple computers went to all the elementary school, and we played like the Oregon Trail, and you take turns rotating. So that was probably my first taste of a computer. And
Yeah.
then like around fifth or sixth grade, they introduced a computer lab, and yeah, I spent hours after school just playing games on there. I got fascinated by it, and that's probably where I started to really like computers. Is just the game, like the way it just captures your attention, playing those games. But the teacher there, he had noticed I was there all the time, and so he had given me this little book that teaches you how to write HTML, so basic websites when I was a kid. So like around sixth grade, I read this. It wasn't like a hard textbook. It had pictures and
Right.
everything, and so I read it and I wrote like my own website, and the teacher liked it. And for me, that was my first intro into coding, is to see stuff that you type in code and it becomes displayed out for you. So that felt super cool. And then they let me create a school website. So I redid the elementary school website. So, and
Oh, nice.
it looked probably what you thought a sixth grader's website looked like in the 90s. It looked
Yep.
terrible, but like as a kid, like I was like, oh man, that's super cool. You think because it all worked, and so that became the website that year. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they took it down after I left, but yeah, it was cool.
Right, right. Nice, man. That's cool that at an early age, you were already starting out doing basic web development, right? I think it's funny. It's a common theme. I was talking to my uncle, and he grew up in the '80s in Oregon. The Oregon Trail game seems to be like a common thing. I caught a little bit of that in the early 2000s, but I think by then we were transitioning to like the website games like Miniclip and
Oh yeah,
Y8 Shockwave, all of those games.
oh
So
yeah, Shockwave games. Yeah, you
yeah,
guys got the
getting all
better
the
games.
also all the viruses on the computers too.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, good times. So at that early age, after doing web development, like that kind of sparked your interest
Yeah.
into coding. Did you ever think it was a possibility at that age to turn that into a career? Like, what was that like after you had done these little side projects for your school?
So after elementary school, I went to junior high, and then that's where I first got to play football. We
Hmm.
didn't really have Pop Warner Elementary League football back in the day that I was aware of, and so
Hmm.
I didn't get to play football until like seventh grade to eighth grade, really.
Yeah.
And by that time, I was like, am I kind of at a crossroads? Should I be a nerd that likes to read and play computer games, or like,
Right.
I'm a pretty big Polynesian kid, and a lot of when I started playing football, there was a lot of encouragement from other parents and
Yep.
just coaches to continue down that path. So I really thought, I set my goals to be like a really good football player, and then so I took that from junior high to high school, and I thought I would pursue, being an NFL, professional football player. I did take a like one or two classes in high school with around coding and stuff, but it was like I had done coding, so they were just easy classes for me, and I wasn't really focused on it, and so that wasn't a big focus for me, and I didn't really know what the world or the careers of coding and technology and computers look like. I just thought all my peers and everyone else and kind of our community kind of pushes the Polynesian community kind of pushes or idolizes glorifies these athletes, and so that's what I wanted, as I thought I wanted to be a football player. And then after I had gone some scholarships, I didn't do too well in high school when I came back to Provo High, and so I landed like a scholarship at a junior college to play football. But
Hmm.
I took a break, went on my mission, and I served in Seattle,
Okay,
right
nice.
where Microsoft is, and so
Yep.
I got to spend a lot of time with people who work at Microsoft, and I noticed like, man, they were always home, and like
Yeah.
they didn't look as tired as the yate workers or the construction workers who came home from their
Hmm.
jobs, and they seemed a little bit happier. And some members like were who would help us teach missionary discussions were like home all the time and always available to help us out. And so that's kind of what like piqued my interest into it, is seeing people working in those technology fields. So when I came home from my mission, I went back to Snow College, and it just wasn't in me, man. The coaches were yelling
Yeah.
at me, and I was like, yo, man, I'm an adult, dude. Just like tell me what
Yep.
you
Yep.
want me to do. Help set
I
better
know exactly what you
expectations.
mean. Yep.
And they were just yelling, and they're like, push, push. And I'm like, yo, dude, do you see I'm at failure, dude. My arms are coming back. Like, how do you
Yep.
not see this? And they're still yelling. And I'm like, yeah, I'm done being treated like a child. And so I I decided that my freshman year, I was like, when I was actually in school, like, oh yeah, I think I'm gonna pursue education and try to do something with my mind. So when I went to college, went to UVU, and I tried to figure out like what to do. So I all I knew is like I didn't want to be broke anymore. Like coming from
Right.
a poor
Right.
kid from Tonga,
Yep.
like yeah, my family was super poor, broke. So like I didn't know, I just didn't want to be that anymore. So I jumped around a bunch of different places, thought I wanted to be a lawyer, realized you have to do a lot of reading and writing, and,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
I'm just not good at that stuff. And so I like the logic puzzles that were part of it. And then during that time, I still like tinkering with computers and fixing other computers, and still
Hmm.
played with it. And then had a conversation with my older brother, and he said, like, you should probably just pursue computers. Like, you're always doing it on your free time, fixing computers. You might as well, see what it looks like. And then with some convincing from my wife, I went and switched my degree, went to when it got into a software engineering program at
Yep.
UVU. And then, yeah, it kind of blew my mind during that time when I was getting recruited to work at bigger places after like an internship, that
Hmm.
the recruiting was wild. It felt like football recruiting. I hadn't gotten recruited in
Right.
high school for football. And so it kind of felt that way with software engineering, is that sometimes they would fly you out, put you in a hotel, wine you
Yeah.
and dine you, and then show you all the cool perks they have. One company I interviewed with, like we played video games for like an hour and ate
Oh,
candy
nice.
and talked, and I was like, man, it feels like I'm getting recruited for football,
Right. Right.
with everyone kind of just showing off their school and their perks.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where yeah, I decided to make that switch and just pursue education after quitting football.
Hmm. I wanted to ask something about when you first started going to UVU and deciding to switch over to software engineering. So before I get into that, kind of want to give a background to it. When I was in 2020, that was a pandemic. I had just switched to, or I transferred from my junior college to the university I was going to, and I was trying to figure out my major, right? And luckily, I was working like this IT support desk internship. And during that time, when I was doing work, I was listening to podcasts, and one of the podcasts that came up was a podcast that Ikani was on. It was a Village Made podcast by Moveo Himuri. Go ahead, check that out on YouTube. But I was listening to your story, and that's what kind of motivated me to switch into computer science. And then remember, I had reached out to Ikani and we got in contact. But I wanted to know, was there any mentors that you had at that early stage when you're trying to figure out what to do in college? Was there any folks that you had to reach out to in order to kind of get you on that path to do software development?
I wish there was, because there wasn't. So when I got into it, because I just knew I liked doing the coding. I liked
Right.
doing the work, but I didn't really know how to like land a job or get an internship. There was a lot of articles online. Initially I went and talked to like the school counselor and the career counselors and then they helped me set up a resume, and it was terrible. Like it looked like a regular business resume that you would
Yeah.
expect, but I didn't know at that time that technical resumes, there's a different expectations from the hiring managers that they want to see. And so yeah, I didn't land anything like my sophomore junior year looking for internships, but luckily I kind of did the same thing with you. Like I really wanted to get into this field, so I worked support, then moved into tech support. And then because I had the ability to talk to customers and be face to face with them, I ended up landing a job doing software consulting where there was a part of it which is interfacing with the customers
Right.
and then building the software products that they needed. And so luckily for me, that internship fell into my lap, and so I didn't really have any mentors, but I learned along the way like what you're supposed to do by seeing um, what seeing what other people's resumes look like. Luckily, that place I went to, like every person, because they were consulting, a lot of people would want to see their resume. So a lot of my coworkers had their resumes up, and so I got to see the expectations of things that these companies were looking for. And so, yeah, really just trying to figure it on my own. I wasn't even able to know any other Polynesians who were in this space. So
Mhm.
yeah, I struggled by myself for a long time.
Well, I appreciate that, and I want to get into the whole resume building too, because I think a big misconception within folks trying to go after a computer science degree is that you'll immediately like land a big tech job after you get out of college. But people don't understand there's so many people that have computer science degrees, so you have to set yourself apart. And a big thing that you provided for me was like a resume tips, right? So can you talk a little bit about what specifically folks can do to kind of boost their resume to set themselves apart from the rest of the crowd with computer science degrees?
Yeah, with coding, there's a lot of abstract thought that goes into it. So a lot of it is conceptual. And so as a hiring manager, when I'm looking through people's resume and I just see like bullet points of stuff that they do, like that looks just like all the other of resumes I'm about to go through.
Yep.
So what I look for now is there's on the technical side of things, I want to see that they have passion and they care about their craft, and usually they're showing that somehow. And so I ask people, instead of the tip I give people is, don't tell me what you can do, show me what you can do. So if you say you can write web pages, show me what web pages you built. If you don't have it online, then how am I supposed to trust it? So it's easier to verify if I can see the projects that you've worked on. If you've written an iOS app or a Android app, like I want to see where you stored that code, and I also want to see, is it still available on the store? If you've done projects with your team, do you feel proud enough to deploy that project on the cloud so people can see, and play around with it? I don't expect it to be perfect, but I look for people who care enough about their craft that they're willing to display that. And so I ask people, don't tell me, show me what you can do on their resume. So put links to your projects, anything you can to help me see that it's tangible, that you can actually do what you say you can do.
Nice. Thank you for that. And then I wanted to talk to your experience at UVU. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced while trying to obtain your degree, and what things do you still rely upon today from what you learned at UVU?
Yeah, so I learned a lot of a lot of the software engineering track is the same track as like computer science. Up until like the last year, we focus on building as a team versus like theoretical research
Yeah.
projects. So like I learned all the fundamental coding. I learned a lot of different programming types of different programming languages.
Mhm.
So you learn a scripting language, you learn an imperial programming language, and then you learn a functional language. And so most languages all fit in those. So once you kind of know, so they build you a very solid foundation, and then they give you those foundations to be able to grow upon. So academics are typically like at least 10 years behind
Yeah.
current trends are, right? So, but they give you the foundations to be able to hopefully quickly learn and adapt to the existing uh, technologies out and understand why they built those things. And so having that foundation and the foundation in testing. So I took some testing courses too when I was at UVU. So having that foundation has helped me easily learn new programming languages or frameworks, or learning new development processes, just because I had that foundation. It wasn't necessarily like I was job ready right after it, but I
Yeah.
learned the fundamentals to be able to learn quickly. So I took a lot of that still with me, and I still use it to help understand why programming languages are set up the way they are, or frameworks, or different paradigms for programming. It helps me understand those things. So that's the biggest thing I took from that 4 year degree on the technical standpoint. The on like the non tangible stuff that you learn from going to a school is, one, it shows grit that you can do something that's hard. That's a 4 year program, and so
Yeah.
employers like seeing that you're willing to stick with something hard over a long period of time.
Mhm.
And the other part of that that's non-tangible is really you get the ability to, well, you get to be around other people and work together in projects and teams. And that's really where you start building your network, is in college. A lot of my classmates, we worked together later at different companies, or because I worked with them at school, like I was able to, jump to another company that they were working at, and they were able to give a recommendation because they had worked with me. And so building up a reputation while you're at a university working on these teams is one of the other benefits of going to a formal school, is you get to build a network. Hopefully, if you're a good
Yeah.
guy and a hard worker,
Yeah.
it's up to you to build your reputation, but
Right,
you
right.
can potentially build a really good network while you're at school. So those are a couple of things I took from it.
Nice. Thank you for that. And then a big like debate these days is the whole degree versus no degree. I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that, and for folks, because I do see how it is kind of enticing to those who are trying to make a career switch later in life, that already have a degree. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the biggest thing is, you know, kind of like what I mentioned with the resumes, like I want to know you can do what you say you can do. And so
Mhm.
if you can code, like usually when you have a job rec out for hiring for a position, there's expectations that you're looking to fill. And a lot of those for the junior engineers or software engineer ones, you're expected to teach them a lot of things. You just want to know that they know enough basics that they could hit the ground running and have the capacity to learn. And so a lot of people can learn on their own. The one downside of learning coding on your own is you don't learn how to code as a team. When you work at bigger companies on bigger projects, you start to realize, at least my paradigm of it is that coding and software engineering is a team sport. And so
Definitely.
if you don't learn how to play on a team, then you're not going to have those skills that you need. And so for those who even want to learn on their own or feel like they're better learning on their own, I feel like my advice is to learn on your own the basics of programming. Learn as much as you can to feel good to put together some basic projects. But when you feel at that point, you should probably apply or do a project together as a team. The free way would probably be find someone that you can work together and build projects as a team, or a mentor that can help you work together and learn that. But if not, probably apply for a coding boot camp, because you need to learn how to interact with teams, and you need to learn the downfalls of when you're working together all on the same code base, and you don't learn that on your own. So yeah, I'm up for either or. The one other downside of like learning how to code on your own is you don't know what you don't know until you get there. And so unless you have someone tell you like, hey,
Right.
you actually don't understand data structures and algorithms and how they work, and you don't understand the impacts that it's putting in your performance of your code. You may be able
Mhm.
to write code, but you're writing it sloppy, and because you don't understand how these data structures work, you don't understand your code is running very poorly, very slow, and it's causing issues. And so um, if you do happen to land a job without going to like a formal 4 year school, then hopefully you can get a mentor that can help you fill in those knowledge gaps that your colleagues or the expectations that they have for you moving forward are there. So yeah, some of those things.
Definitely. No, I think one of the greatest things that helped me when I was doing my degree was the whole fact that they require in our program to do paired programming.
Yeah.
So like there was a lot of times where I would get stuck, and because I had that team, that partner in the process of creating an application, he was able to debug or optimize the code in a certain way that I didn't think about. And definitely agree with you that you do have it's a team sport when it comes to these large applications. It's not just one. Obviously, you'll have some folks that are definitely smart and know how to run things, but you still need someone, kind of a second pair of eyes, to look at code and see how things can be tweaked a little bit here and there to optimize his best performance, right? So I appreciate that. And then I wanted to go back. So you mentioned, like, when you're going through the whole hiring process, that a lot of these companies were recruiting you, like how sometimes they wine and dine like the football recruits, right? But was it immediate like that, or did you have to go through like the whole technical coding interview first, and then once you pass that, then they wine and dine you?
Yeah, you have to get through the technical side. So there's that
Okay.
aspect.
Yep.
So that's the other thing that they don't teach you that I had to figure out on my own is like landing a job after you have the skills is like one, you have to learn how to interview. And learning how to interview means like you have to know the technical things that they're going to ask you, whether it's whiteboarding or doing or solving some coding challenges to be able to get that. So they usually use that to screen out the candidates. So usually it's a technical screen to find out whether or not the person has the skills that they say they do, or at least the minimum skills that they're requiring. And then the second part is the cultural fit, right? Like because it's a team sport, like how a person interacts with other team members is very important. You know, you're talking about opinions on how you want to build things, and you're arguing in a good way about what solutions you should implement. And so, if the person that's sitting across to you is an arrogant jerk, like you're not going to want to work with him, or if he's super prideful, or it might be that environment, that company wants that type of environment, right? So they're looking
Yeah.
for that cultural fit. But yeah, there's that two parts. You got to pass the screening first to get to enjoy the fun stuff.
To reap the rewards, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. So how was your career? What did your career look like early on once you graduated college? What was that like? And then how has it been since you started early on and to where you're at now?
Yeah, so going through the technical support side and then finally landing an internship. The internship was, I think this is when I realized like this is a different career for me. Is when I first started my internship, I had learned a couple different programming languages, but it wasn't the one that was needed for that company or that project. And so they gave me a book to learn Java, and
Okay, yep.
they were like, here, you know, you're going to get a few weeks, learn Java on your own, show us what you can do in your projects. And so there was another intern with me that got hired. And so they would give us small projects to work on, but then mostly they were like, hey, we want you to learn this project, this programming language too, in this framework. And so I would do the projects, the small projects, and then I would go and like learn, just sit there, read the book, and try it out on my laptop and build out small projects. The other intern who was with me, he as soon as he was done with his small projects, like he just dipped out and went home to play video games. And so by the end of the like our time together, like the 3 months later, like they let him go, and then they offered me a full time position. And so like he just didn't have the grit to actually like enjoy the work that he was doing. And that's when I realized like software engineering is knowledge work. There's a lot of things
Yeah.
that you got to know. IT is the same way. You got to know things, how they work together, and you have to have that craving to continue to learn, and want to learn to be better, because that knowledge is your craft. You know, that's what lawyers do. They get paid because what they know and the information they can give out. For engineers, it's also what they know, but also what they can build. So that became super important to me to learn. I learned that early on is like, hey, I have to continue to learn and do well in this. So I went from an intern, and then I worked at a company called Domo for a couple years, and so
Yep.
a lot of my classmates were there, and so that was a fun time. And then I spent originally I thought I was going to be like start my own tech company and be a founder, and
Right.
I'm like, cool. So
Yeah.
I my career from there looks like, if you look at my resume or my LinkedIn, it looks wild. I've jumped to a lot of different places.
Which is normal for those who
Yeah,
don't know, like in the tech industry. That's normal for us to be jumping around.
yeah, especially when the economy is really good. Right now, it's not as good, but when it's really good, you're getting like recruiters, you know, at least once a week, you know, maybe daily, depending on the title you hold. Uh, Early titles
Definitely.
like senior, like even regular engineers, senior engineers, like you're going to get
Hmm.
recruited more often because they want to mold you. So, Yeah, so during that time, I jumped to a lot of places because the thought was for me is like I want to see how these big billion-dollar companies run their engineering teams and how their processes run, so I can eventually do my own startup. And so I jumped to a lot of companies, and then around that time, I got invited to join like executive MBA program
Oh,
at
nice.
BYU, and so I got an MBA, which I didn't think I like wanted or needed because
Right, right.
in the tech field usually it's just what you know, and so once you get like a
Yep.
degree or a certificate, like really it's up to you to like determine your pay scale on what you learn and do. And so it didn't make sense for me to get an MBA, but with some promptings and some spiritual
Yeah.
guidance, I was like, sure, I was humble enough to listen to those promptings and do it. And so
Nice.
um, I started getting to more into the leadership side of things. But I joined a startup about a year or so ago, and then unfortunately that failed. And so I learned to what it takes to actually build a company, from the early products and then moving forward. And so I decided to take a break from that and just focus on the career side and just do the leadership stuff. So I've been doing mostly management the last couple of years.
Nice. So how do you feel your MBA has kind of helped in terms of, is it tech management that I'm assuming that you're doing now, right?
Yeah, so I'm an engineering manager now, and so it helps
Yep.
because for me, one thing I didn't realize is the relationships and how to
Yeah.
work with people. With coding, a lot of it is kind of just working on your own or working with a
Mhm.
team, but um, you don't really care about. I don't know. For me, I don't really care about relationships. It's just like let's just code and get this thing done.
Right,
Like
right, right.
I mean, you try to be a good person to be a good teammate, but you're not really knowing. You don't really understand the impacts of how to get a whole team to work together. So you're isolated, building, writing this specific code on your own most of the time. So the MBA helped me realize that how a business implements strategy and builds products and rolls out things, there's a lot of connecting parts to it, and learning how to communicate and build those relationships with other departments as well as how to strategize is super important. So I didn't like it at the time when I was doing it, but then when I moved into to the leadership side, I started realizing these things that I did learn in my MBA actually do help me out now.
Right, right. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are because I feel like I'm at the point in my career where I'm at that stage where you were at, where it's like I don't really talk to, like, I have leadership. I still have a good relationship with them, but at the same time, I'm just busy doing like the tech stuff, like coding and creating all these scripts and stuff. Did you ever see yourself down the road that you'd be in this leadership position, or did you have that mentality? Because I kind of feel like I have that mentality now where I'm just going to be doing engineering stuff the rest of my career. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be an individual contributor forever. Like I thought I
Yep.
would maybe be like an architect as I was learning.
Right.
And so
Right.
I was like, yeah, there's why am I doing this stuff, while I was doing it. But um afterwards, like one thing I realized is I do like helping people out, and so
Hmm.
I always mentored people on that came on my team when they were new to help them understand the environment and the code base. I loved mentoring interns and younger engineers on what they learned, just mostly because I felt like I was left alone for so long, like with no mentorship, like, and that sucked. So I wanted to make sure people could get some mentorship and be better. So I wanted to be the mentor that I didn't have for other people. And I
Yep.
realized, oh man, I actually like that people side of things. And I
Hmm.
started to embrace it more. And luckily, the companies let me like slowly transition to. I was like a tech lead first, and which you get some project management responsibilities, but you don't formally do the HR parts of for people. And then when I
Hmm.
jumped over and started doing management as a whole, like, oh man, I really do like this. And it was the same idea. Like when you're coding, it feels really cool, really good too when you
Yeah.
write a piece of code and it goes
It's like
out.
fulfilling.
Yeah, and it goes out and the customers like it's cool when it starts working. It
You're
feels
right.
it feels even better when customers use it and they're like, "Oh, we love it," and they love you, and you're like, "Yeah, this
Yep.
feels great." So the feedback loop is really quick. You're like, yeah, you can get the immediate feedback of what the impact that you're showing. When you get into leadership, it's a lot harder. The impact that you're showing really
Right.
is like on the projects, which could be months to a year long, to and then
Hmm.
the people you're working with, which is takes even longer. Like it takes months for them to make those skill changes and upgrades in their own lives. And so you don't see that immediate feedback, but that feedback when you get it, it feels so much better. I feel like for me, it was a much more enjoyable feeling building through teams and people versus just building by myself. And so I really enjoy the leadership type stuff now going through it. But for those who enjoy the individual contributor stuff, there is still some influence that you need to show. The higher you climb up through your
Right.
titles, you still need to learn how to talk to other people and influence them. So you still need those people skills to be able to influence change or be able to communicate the trade-offs to the things that you're implementing and also receive that feedback.
Mhm.
Some people have a hard time. I think most people have a hard time receiving feedback, and so as you climb the ladder, and you're being asked more questions, you need to have those soft skills as well. But I I floated towards the leadership side, which mostly
Nice.
falls on the project management and people's skill side.
Right, right. I wanted to talk and pivot a little bit. Yeah, you mentioned like the whole mentorship thing, and I think one of the greatest things that I've been able to have early on in the tech industry was like your mentorship that you provided me early on, and then on LinkedIn you formed the group, the Poly Dev group, and one of the things when if anyone's on LinkedIn, definitely go check it out, the Poly Dev group. But on the banner, one of the banners says "Si Ibe Kaiha," so it's a Tongan proverb. Can you talk a little bit about that, what it means, and then the whole polydev group, how you came about that?
Yeah, see, but it means small but great. And so
Yeah.
what I as I started my career, like I felt so alone, and then I started meeting people at school who were Polynesian, and then I started working at these tech companies, and then we would meet Polynesians. So the first place I worked, that were really with Polynesians was a Domo, and then there was a couple guys there, like the VP of marketing and um, Rick Tolman and Sonia Havili were there.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Haygoth was there. There's a couple other people, the Polynesians, and Sione made a real effort to get us all together, and so we would have a Domonesians lunch group like once a month. And so
Nice.
for me, that felt super cool to be connected to other Polynesians who I didn't even know within my own company. And Sione was the one
Hmm.
who went and looked everyone and brought us all together. And so I like being able to have people in the network that you can bounce ideas off of or get advice on and stuff, and continue that mentorship, as a community. So I just took that on through LinkedIn and through other companies I worked at to build this Polynesian dev group to be able to give a resource for other people to tap on their shoulder. Because I feel like a lot of our community is willing to at least have a conversation, asking too much time
Definitely.
to have a conversation and ask like how you got there and what it takes to get there. And so most people are really open to sharing that and help other aspiring people in the tech field. So that's why I built that group, because even though we're small, we can be great. It's like the metaphor also relates to the island general. We're not just like uh, in the sea. We're not just islands in the sea. We're a sea of island. That paradigm of being like realizing that you come from a culture that is highly intellectual, that traveled and navigated the seas, you know, long before people had even known about it. So that's the heritage that we come, that we can, even though we're population wise can be small, we can still be a great impact on the world in general. That was the thought behind that.
Definitely. No, and I'm grateful for that too, just because of the folks that I've been able to meet, like um, here in the States, abroad, just understanding their experiences in getting into the tech industry definitely have helped me. And then just, again, like you said, building that network, the importance of building that network, especially within the tech industry. I guess I'm also interested, what things do you think we can do to help our own community, for those who are interested in tech? What are some of the things that we can kind of help them be a part of this, like the tech industry, the booming tech industry?
Yeah, I feel like just awareness. A lot of people don't know what we do. If someone saw me on the street or at church, they wouldn't know that I'm a software engineer and what I do. And so just giving awareness to people and let them know that you that the career in tech offers a lot of benefits. For the most part, there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to your work and your schedule, and then a lot of fulfillment in what you do, and also flexibility about where you can work. You can work remotely, and so uh, a lot of people can benefit from that if they have goals outside of work. Not everyone can go in and work 9 to 5 or 60 hours a week or whatever. A lot of companies are pushing. And so, if you can find people or talk to leaders or community leaders who are looking for people who to share what they do for a living, like, man, my ask is you probably go out there and out of your comfort zone and just share with people what you do for a living and how it impacts it. And a lot of people will find it boring that you're on computers all day, but if you can help them understand the benefits and the life it lets you be able to
Right.
lead because of it, I think there's an opportunity that we can introduce more people to it, right? Like if we glorified it, or as much as we do sports, we would have a
Yeah.
lot more Polynesians in tech than we do.
Definitely, definitely. I guess what are some of the difficulties that you've faced in the tech industry? Like, as nice as like the salaries that they offer are, and the lifestyle of remote work. What are some of the difficulties that you face? That to help our community understand that it's not an easy journey getting into tech as well.
Yeah, it's hard. There's a reason they pay you a lot of money to do what you do, is because it's not something everyone can do, and it's not innately something everyone can do. It's not something like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a software developer and I'm going to join this boot camp and I'm going to be able to
Right.
do it. There's a lot of people that have failed boot camp, and I've tried to ward them off. Like, I let them know, hey, like, this is the hard things about coding. Like, it's a very frustrating craft to master,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
one little character, like you're missing a semicolon, can be infuriating. And if you're
Yep.
looking through hundreds of lines of code for this one character you misplaced, and your code is breaking, and you're spending, minutes to hours, like, frustrated about this one thing, it can be
Yep.
aggravating. That might not be something you want to do. But if, on the flip side, like, if you get that reward of finding that one character that's wrong and your code works and
Yep.
it feels intrinsically good for you, then that's probably a path you like to follow. If you like looking for solutions and solving puzzles and problems, then this could probably be a path for you. If you like computers and you can type a decent amount, like not a lot, like you can type, um, then this could be a path for you, but you don't really know until you start coding and doing it. And so the passion, it's hard to find in people, because a lot of people see the money that's there, right?
Yeah.
Like when I wanted to be a lawyer, like it looked like the money was good, and then
Exactly.
you start doing the work and realize, like, oh, I'm terrible at this thing
Hmm.
that's probably required every day for my job. And so know that it's hard, and conceptually it's very hard at the beginning. When you do software engineering, what you basically are doing is you're taking these lines of code and you're trying to organize it in a way that kind of reflects the real world. And so you're conceptually saying, like, oh, this translates it, so this is a service I'm sending something to. And you're building these, what is the word for, um, I forget what the word is, because I was born in Tonga, so that's why I don't know it. So, um, you're putting these, you're modeling your code based on, like, real life things,
Yep.
to try to organize thousands of lines of code together. And so that can be very hard to do. And so, um, it's just not easy. And so, even if
Yeah.
you, like, for me, I chose to go to a 4 year school because they had coding boot camps. But, like, I
Right.
chose to go to a 4 year school because I didn't know anyone that did this degree. And I felt like I needed that more guidance to understand what I was doing. So,
Right.
and it's hard. Like in college, understanding how code bases were put together was super hard. Like, there were some kids that learned how to code in high school and they were jerks and just did their own homework. But,
I
like,
definitely had those
yeah,
classmates.
but then there's kids like who are struggling just like me, and so we would put
Yep.
together, study groups, and so then we all learned together. And so that's where I learned how to network, is through those study groups,
Hmm.
and realize, like, hey, it's okay not to know everything, but I like this enough to keep trying.
Yeah.
And I was with people who were struggling, who I thought was struggling like me, and so it was great to be able to take that. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's not easy, but it's definitely worth it for those who have the same affinities towards problem solving, and solving hard problems, and also
Yep.
building. If you like building things, it's really cool to be able to write code and see the website or the
Right.
project you're building or the game that you're building show up and you see it visually. So if you like that type of thing, you might end up liking coding. But if you don't,
Yeah.
then don't waste your
Definitely.
time. You're gonna
Yeah,
frustrate yourself.
yeah. No, it's funny that I think that whole aspect of like the puzzle, the problem solving, that's what attracted me to like software development at the beginning. Because I think I was going down like the civil engineering route just because the money and like the things that I saw in the salary wise, but later ended up we had to take a basic coding class, and that's what kind of drew me towards that. And then another point I wanted to bring up too is the whole debugging process. I definitely agree. I think one of the greatest things I learned early on, I had a teacher that said something to the fact of math homework maybe 3 hours, English homework maybe 2 hours, but computer science maybe 3 weeks trying to figure out where the bug is in your code. But when you do figure it out, man, it is one of the most like satisfying things to get your code to compile and to run and execute, right? So
Yeah.
you probably been in those same
Oh
situations,
yeah.
right? The whole
Oh
debugging
yeah.
process.
And it gets easier after college because they
Definitely,
there's
definitely.
tools that be able to help you out. But that struggle of understanding, like, oh man, this isn't working. You probably go through that daily as an engineer, if not like weekly. And so,
Hmm.
being okay to sit with that uncomfortableness of like, oh crap, is this going to work? Oh man, I need to get this done
Right,
by
right.
then. And then like you get that same experience in college when your projects aren't compiling. So yeah, that's
Yep.
exactly the same feeling. If you like that feeling, then hey, you
You're
should
gonna
probably get into
enjoy,
coding.
yeah.
You're gonna
You're
like
gonna
coding.
enjoy coding.
If you hate it and you want to throw your laptop against the wall, then yeah, you find something
Probably,
else.
yeah, find something else. No, I'm glad you brought that up. Just to help people understand some of the things that you need to expect when getting into a tech role that involves coding, right? Is that
Mhm.
there's going to be some frustration in it, especially like mentally. It's really mentally draining. And I
Yeah.
want to get your perspective on that. How do you break away from your computer and avoid the burnout that comes with being in technology, right? Because coding for hours on end can definitely take a toll on maybe not physically, but mentally. I know it's draining. So a thing we often say is like, how do you get out and touch the grass, or what are some things that you advise young engineers that are in the field to do?
Yeah, I take a lot. I took a like a what is it called? Like a college success class where it
Hmm.
talked about how to study,
Yep.
and it was like the meta around studying. So it's how we studied, how to get the most effectiveness out of your study, and taking those breaks and learning how to break up your mental work, as well as making sure you take care of your physical body and be able to mentally be able to do what you're supposed to do. So luckily I took those aspects into my coding career, and so I knew my brain and I guess my fingertips are the most valuable thing from me. So
Right.
I needed to make sure I keep those strong, and learning how to take a mental break, and also being okay sitting on a problem. Sometimes you're working on a problem so hard and you're so frustrated, and this doesn't happen just coding exclusively. It happens maybe with any when you're trying to problem solve. But if you're focused on it too much, your emotions get in the way, and you're very narrowed on your solution. You think that has to be solved. When you step away and you do non-coding activities or different activities than what you're doing, sometimes that lets your brain work, and in that relaxed environment, I think that's why a lot of ideas come to people in the showers or while they're walking, is because it lets your brain think outside of those emotional constraints or the stressful constraints that you put yourself in those work environments. So breaking away with it sometimes helps you solve those problems. But yeah, I've learned that the mental side, like if I want to keep my brain sharp, you have to learn how to take those mental breaks. You have to learn how to stay hydrated. And as much people don't want to say is like you still have to take care of your physical body. What you eat, what you put into it really affects the output that you get on your system as a whole, is to think. And so try not to party the day before I go back to work on Mondays. So Sundays,
Yeah.
stay away from the Faikava and other things, and prepare for it. And so
Yeah.
those are a lot of things that you need to take in. So in working at a startup too, we're working crazy amount of hours. Like I love working, but it was very detrimental to my family, right? And so I
Yeah.
had those responsibilities as well. And so learning how to take breaks, not just for yourself, but also for your life and its well-being in general, is something that you have to be doing to be able to do your best work. Is to step away, learn what you do to be able to breathe. The other part of it too is this idea of flow. I don't know if you've heard about it.
No.
There's been a lot of studies around flow, but basically it's when you get into the zone. Like a lot of athletes feel like it too.
Oh, okay. Yep.
When you learn how to get into the zone, if you played sports before, it's where things are just happening. You're making shots or throwing balls that just seems so effortless for you. You're just so locked in. Everything kind of disappears. In that
Yep.
flow state, what they found is that it's really where your skill and the challenge that you're being asked to do just fit perfectly, and it unlocks you to be in the zone. There's another part, like if it's too easy for you and you're not
Yeah.
being challenged enough, you'll feel bored. And the other flip side of that is if the challenge, that the task that you're asked to do is too challenging, you'll feel too much anxiety and you'll be overwhelmed and too anxious. And so the flow is just like right in the middle of that zone, right? And so
Right.
that's where you want to be. And if you learn how to be able to unlock that
Interesting.
for you, there's studies around that, like around deep work, how to put yourself into the mindset of locking yourself into to do the deep work that you can do. There's things
Right.
that you can do to help stimulate your body to get into deep work, creating ceremonies for you to do. I forgot what movie it was, but Matthew McConaughey, like he like does this thing where he hits his chest like 3 times and he's like breathes in and he's like, yeah, then he's ready to act. There's things
Hmm.
you can do mentally to help you prepare. Usually it's like a routine. If you sit down, have your cocoa and eat your breakfast, sit down at your desk, and you do certain things, it kind of triggers your brain to start working. And
To
then,
get in that flow.
yeah, to get into that flow state. So you can develop those ceremonies that help you unlock yourself and to get into that quicker. Once you do it enough times, you can get into that flow state. But the work you do has to be challenging enough that it's
Right.
worthwhile for you. So
Where it's to your point where it's not, like you said, not too boring, but not too much where you're getting anxiety
yeah.
from doing overworking yourself. Right.
Yeah, and so that really unlocks your ability to get a lot of work done, because you might end up working 4 hours and you're like, oh crap, like I feel like I just sat down. But
Nice.
that helps you because it feels very positive. Having
Yeah.
that flow state, being in the zone feels really good. And
Hmm.
so that's another thing to keep in mind too, is like once you learn how to unlock the flow state and get all the answers to the questions you have, that you are enough to sit, like for hunters, it's like the kill shot. When they
Yeah.
know they're going to make the kill shot, they're totally focused in, and everything falls away. It's usually when you don't know all the context that you feel anxious and you need to take these breaks to kind of
Right.
figure it out. So, but all of it comes down to making sure you're in a good mental state to be able to do the knowledge work you're asked to do.
Definitely. No, I appreciate that. It's and I like that's why I wanted to get a gauge your thoughts on it, because it's definitely something you have to understand when getting into any field within the tech industry, right? I wanted to pivot real quick. I'm gonna try to see if I can share this real quick. I wanted to gauge your thoughts on this video here, and it'll pivot good into the next question that I wanted to share with you. Let me know if you can see that.
Yeah.
All right.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What's your name?
I'm Optimus.
Okay. My name is Tony.
Tony?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Tony.
Nice to meet you too, buddy. Hey, can you
Awesome.
can you play basketball? Can you shoot like jump shots?
Maybe one day.
I'll teach
Can
you.
you?
I'll teach you.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
man.
you, Tony.
Thank you, brother.
Much appreciated.
All right, man. You like Balenciaga? I got an outfit for you.
Really?
Yeah, I got an outfit for you.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm about to order you. Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna order you, and then I'll see you in another.
All right. So I kind of wanted to just share that to pivot into our new question. What are your thoughts on these new emerging technologies, especially AI? I know that's like some of the things within our community that folks are interested in getting into or trying to understand. So, what are your thoughts on that? The whole Optimus robot that Elon just rolled out with things
I,
like that.
yeah, I think stuff like that is cool. The thing to keep in mind with all emerging technologies is there's the really cool features that they bring, but there's side effects that perhaps we don't know until it's out on the
Definitely.
field and tried enough. And so that's typically why tech companies try to do like a soft, slow rollout and beta
Mhm.
test things because we don't know all the side effects that it could cause on people or impact customers in general. So, yeah, I think it's really cool. I use AI a lot in my
Mhm.
current work. It's really good. So, the thing to keep in mind is that an AI, a machine learning algorithm, is really based on input and output. Like you feed it, if you feed it the right data, it'll spit out the right answers that you're going
Yep.
through. But if you feed it crap, it'll give you crap back.
Crap.
But really, I think its most marketable thing for us is that it'll help you do mundane or very tasks that take a lot of repetition over. So if I had to convert a giant table and I had this all these requirements that I needed to condense down, then it's really easy to feed that into like ChatGPT and ask it to condense it and summarize it for you. So those are things it's really good at doing. What it's doing those simple tasks. What it's can't really do, like it mimics it right now, is do the
Yeah.
creativity part, right? Like
Mhm.
it when you ask it to do something and it creates like a picture for you, the only reason it creates those pictures is because it has a database of millions or hundreds of different uh, pictures, and it guesses and puts those together on what you're looking for. And for you, that's novel and new, but it's a
Yeah.
thing that already exists,
It existed in the past.
in
Yep.
the database. So it's not really good at creating thing. And I think that is the human aspect of these future technologies that are always going to be critical. Really, AI is a tool. The creative part is wholly human. Is completely, that's something we provide and give value to
Yep.
as a world, as we are able to introduce new ideas, concepts, and things that don't exist yet. Maybe there's maybe some form of us copying existing work to kind of build off
Right.
of, but creativity in general is something AI won't truly do, right? It's still using something to be able to do that. It's not something it can do on its own. So
Mhm.
yeah, I love it. I love using AI to help me in my daily work, to automate routine tasks, or help me condense things and to write certain things and to clean up my emails. Yeah, I'm terrible at writing emails.
Yep.
I
Yep.
write code. I used to write code all day long, and terrible at writing my English and grammar. So it's
No,
because I
I
was
agree
born in
with
Tonga. That's why.
you. No, I appreciate your thoughts on that. I guess just in closing, what are some like projects that you're maybe working on, or things that you want to share with the community, or advice that you could give to the community trying to get in to the tech?
For those who are trying to get in tech, like find someone, reach out to Bruce, reach out to me, schedule some time to like talk through, what you're thinking, and listen to our experience and see if it's what you want to do. Really, you just need to see people doing what you're doing to want to break through and see if it's something that applies to you. So, yeah, I wish there was more Polynesians tech. It's given me a great life, and it's been a blessing to be able to work in tech with the flexibility, and I want that for more people. But on the flip side, it's not always something that's attainable or even
Yeah,
possible for some people, based on constraints or even the talents that they have. Maybe it doesn't align, but hopefully they find the thing that they're passionate about. But if it happens to be tech, please reach out. Always willing to help.
sounds good. Well, again, thank you for being on, Kanye. And again, if there's anything, is there any way that people can reach out to you if they wanted to ask for advice or things like that? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, I still have I think my old website's still up, ikanisamani.com, so they can just
Yep.
reach me there or find me on LinkedIn. I'm not on
Yep.
LinkedIn as much as I used to be, but eventually I'll get to those messages. But I have a contact form they can reach out, and that goes directly to my email, and we can get connected
Nice.
through that.
All right, thank you. I think that was, sorry, before we end off, one of the greatest things that I got from you was that blog post that you had sent me to, on how to kind of boost up your resume. So definitely, if you guys are looking to get some advice from Ikani, definitely check his website out and reach out to him on LinkedIn. So thanks for having you on, Ikani, and sharing your story today.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on.